Rolling. Well, hello everybody. My name is JP. I am the ring announcer for Rockstar Pro Wrestling based out of Dayton, Ohio. And I am sitting here in my audio studio with a man who I never thought I would invite into my personal place of business, Mr. JT Davidson.
Well, just like always, JP, I think it's necessary that I introduce myself because obviously, you don't do it the way that I would do it, just even in Rockstar. But, it's the manager of champions, JT Davidson. And let's be honest, probably one of the best businessmen in the business.
Yes, you are a highly successful businessman. And I'm here. I have the audio set up. You are the one who wanted to hire my services in order to get this thing funded, or rather going. You wanted to call this show The Business of the Business.
Well, the business of the business is, looking at it from a different angle. Looking at our business, the wrestling business, as what it is. It's a endeavor. It's something that we have to work together to make successful, but really there's a lot that goes on and a lot of decisions that are made that I find interesting, as far as why would you do such, like this weekend is the Hall of Fame.
Very
WWE
true.
Hall of Fame.
Very true. As we record this, it happened just last night.
It happened last night. WrestleMania is tonight. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're not going to be able to talk about that. But what goes on, the decision-making, why would you put certain people in the Hall of Fame, even if personally you wouldn't put them in there?
Now, before you got into athlete representation, just as kind of a qualifier, the bona fides, if you will, explain why you are expert in this topic, what qualifies you to give an opinion about business in general, and more specifically, business as it relates to the professional wrestling industry.
Well, look, I think a lot of us on the independent level, we all have things that we do outside of wrestling. I've spent the last 12 years of my life building a career in the retail environment. I work for a large health and fitness retailer, and I personally manage 29 locations. So that's one of the things that yes, I do outside of the ring. When I tell people I am a successful businessman, that's not a gimmick, so to speak. That's something that I actually do.
Well, managing 29 successful locations, that's actually, that's more business acumen than a lot of promoters in the state of Ohio have in general. In case anybody's curious about me, I know that I'm merely your producer in this endeavor, but I have multiple degrees in broadcasting. I have been in the professional broadcasting industry. I am a paid voice actor, as well as the voice of Rockstar Pro. So in addition to that, I've done marketing and promotions for nonprofit trade associations, internationally based, as well as for lots of different media outlets. So I'm not the entrepreneur, but the marketing is definitely my home base, if you will. So I think you and I might actually be able to get along without spewing too much vile and venom at each other.
Oh, well, we'll find out about that. But I have a question for you. As far as the wrestling business, what got you into doing ring announcing? What got you into wrestling?
What got me into professional wrestling was I was in radio, and I met a guy at an event who I was talking about how I love pro wrestling, and he's like, well, I'm an independent pro wrestler. And so I never really had gone to independent shows before, so I marked out a little bit for him. He was a huge metalhead, and that was the format that I was in at the time. And so he was marking out for me, and he started bringing me along to shows. And then we got to book a very large concert here in Dayton, Ohio, 25,000 people, and I was able to book HWA, one of the original versions back when Cody owned it, for X-Fest. I met a lot of the guys there, and they've kind of given me a free pass, and they realized that with my broadcast skills and whatnot, and background in theater and everything, that I'd be pretty good on the mic. I've done commentary. I've been a personality, per se. And then with Rockstar Pro Wrestling, really it came to the fact that after a couple of the ring announcers left, there wasn't anybody with a big enough voice that was willing to take the job. Obviously, you probably could have handled it yourself, but I kind of fell, and they said, we want you to not only be the ring announcer, but we want you to be a host. We want you to welcome people into the building and make them feel like, you're the host of the party. So it's worked out pretty decently so far. I mean, for as much as you say as I don't know what I'm doing, they tend to cheer me and boo you.
Well, look, I've said this multiple occasions. I don't think these people understand, the difference between someone who's trying to entertain and someone who's, actually trying to get in and win a match. That's exactly what I said when I introduced Alex Colon for the first time. This is an athlete. This is someone who knows what he's doing in and out of the ring. He doesn't, pander to the fans. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
You know what? I do want to get into the hierarchy and the championship scene at Rockstar Pro Wrestling before we end this broadcast or recording, whatever you want to call it. But as you mentioned earlier, it's WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that we should kind of go over the inductees from the Hall of Fame that was just on the WWE Network last night and kind of give our opinion of those.
Sure.
I missed the beginning speech for Rikishi.
Rikishi, I saw that.
How did he do?
He did fine. I think they could have played him off a little bit earlier. It's one of those that you like the guy, but man, he didn't have a lot to actually say.
Same thing with Zbyszko, I felt.
I could talk about Zbyszko for 2 hours.
I mean, the story of him coming into, going through Bruno's bushes and whatnot, it was a great story, and it was a great story moment, but at times he just seemed overwhelmed by the entire thing, and which is kind of disappointing, given his history of mic skills.
I don't think Zbyszko was overwhelmed. I think Zbyszko was trying to fake humility.
Trying to fake humility?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I think Zbyszko is one of the most arrogant pricks that I've ever seen in my life.
Hello, Pot. This is the kettle. You're black.
Hey, I won't give you the same response I gave you the other night when you said that to me.
Right.
Look, no, I mean that, though. Zbyszko is one of those guys that he tries to remain relevant, and he's not. I don't like the guy. I think he's just over the top, trying to, like last night. That was the entire thing for me, was he was trying to act like he was emotional, trying to act like, but he wasn't. He wasn't at all. He was trying to put on a show. And I know that's part of it. I get it. But, the Hall of Fame, I've seen some amazingly emotional speeches, given, and that was by far not one of them.
Well, I guess I can kind of see that perspective. Now, before we move on to the next inductee, Rikishi. Worthy, not worthy?
That's a tough one. I say worthy, but not necessarily just based on the Rikishi character. I think it's a 30-year career that culminated with that character. That's by far the most well-known, but this is a true veteran in the business. So I think that's one of those that, yes, but not just solely based on the merit of that character.
Are we judging worthy or not worthy based on their skill or their contributions, or whether or not they legitimately moved the needle?
Well, again, I don't... Now, that the last point's interesting. Did they move the needle? I don't know. Now, skilled, I don't know that there's that many big men that ever moved like Rikishi in the ring. I mean, I think he moved very, very well. Again, he's an athlete. He's a big man who's an athlete. Man, I don't know. Move the needle. I don't know that there's anything that he ever did that took the business in a different direction or anything like that. But but then again, you could say that about a lot of people that have been put in the Hall of Fame.
True. Coco Beware was,
There you go.
one of those ones that made me scratch my head. Well, I mean, you look at his days with Too Cool, back when Raw and SmackDown were separate brands.
Right.
And you got to admit, he sold a lot of merchandise.
Yeah.
He was a huge fan favorite. When he turned...
And that's the thing, the turn. I wasn't even thinking about that. The turn is what... he actually did make an impact, because he was supposedly the guy that took Stone Cold Steve Austin out of business.
Right.
Broke his neck with that running over with the car. Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, well, that's a moment right there. And
Okay.
I really wish during his Hall of Fame induction, though, he would have said, "I did it for The Rock."
That's what he said back then. and of course, he did bring us back Haku under the WWE banner with that awesome afro that he was rocking back in the day.
True.
So, I'll give him points for that one. Zbyszko, worthy, not worthy? Personally, obviously, you find him to be a prick. However, his professional accomplishments.
Would his professional accomplishments have eventually been what they were if he didn't marry the promoter's daughter?
This is something I didn't even realize. He married Vern's daughter?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, his accomplishments, like his career, though, started in the WWF.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, again, you know how nepotism is in wrestling.
Very true.
I could talk about that in OI4K all day long. But the nepotism is a one of those things that happens. The promoter is the champion in a lot of cases because they can't trust anybody else. Right. And then it turns into like a Greg Gagne situation where, they're trying to keep it in the family. Well, in that particular situation, Greg was not physically a big enough superstar to carry that banner.
Right.
So he gave it to his son-in-law, Larry Zbyszko.
Okay.
So again, I'm not faulting the guy, because I'll be honest, if I were in the same situation, I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing, but I don't know how much of his, later career in the AWA, was because of his accomplishments or because it was given to him because Vern didn't feel like he could trust anybody.
All right. Moving on to Alundra Blaze. Medusa.
I think you give it to her just on the impact alone. Had she not have dropped that title in the trash can in 1995, I don't know. Well, she probably still would have went in, but to say that she had a massive impact on the business, that's the night. It was that one night. Aside
from Hall and Nash showing up, that was the first shot in the war. It was Hall and Nash showing up. Alundra Blaze, though, that was a pretty harsh thing to do.
Well, and genius by Eric Bischoff. I'm sorry, I don't care how you feel about the guy, but that was genius by Eric Bischoff. It got a lot of people to turn their heads and look.
Very true, very true. Shock value is definitely something that can be utilized, but it's one of those ones where you have to wonder how history will judge you.
Well, I think, had WCW won the Monday Night Wars, it wouldn't have mattered how history judged him because you're the winner.
True. The winners get to read the history books.
Absolutely. Why do you think, last night, when in reality, there were just as many WCW fans as there were WWE fans back in the 90s. Just as many. You're talking, they got these huge numbers, these 4.0 ratings or 5.0 ratings. Well, they were both getting them. Okay, mm-hmm. So that means there were 5 million people watching Raw, 5 million people watching Nitro.
Well, at the peak, they were getting in the 7s.
Okay,
but,
so thank you, Mr. Calculator. But my point is more the fact that now that history is being written by the WWE, people now boo when you hear WCW. It's a propaganda machine, not the fact that there were actually that many people that disliked it. Now, toward the end, I will say that, of course, they burned their bridges and that's why they lost, but it's a whole other conversation.
Speaking of dislike, I'm a huge fan of Tolkien.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings and the story of The Hobbit. And the Rockstar Nation obviously does not like you, but I wonder why they always call you Bilbo.
I have no idea.
I mean, you hear the chant, right?
JP. I don't think they're saying Bilbo, but I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Tatsumi Fujinami. This is one that you really have to be almost a student of the game, and unfortunately, in the United States, if it's not, easily accessed and on our TV, most of us don't care,
right.
Unless you become passionate, which most wrestling fans are, to learn about the dragon. I thought it was a very nice induction by Ric Flair. I was impressed that he actually followed orders, and when they gave him the wrap-up signal, he went ahead and wrapped up.
Right.
Definitely not something I would have expected out of the Nature Boy. But, man, Alundra talked forever, didn't she?
She did, but I thought she did well.
She had everything planned out, at least.
Yes.
She didn't sound like she was rambling.
No, but it got better as it went on, because when she first started talking, I felt like it was very robotic. Because she was reading off of a script. But as she got to rolling, it started to sound more organic, which I appreciated.
It was a nice little touch of her pulling out the iPad Mini there. But
right.
When she was pulling stuff out of the trash can, did you notice she had a I think her top was just basically resting. It wasn't actually attached to anything, so she kind of had to like hold things. There was no wardrobe malfunction, is what I'm trying to say.
JP, you're a perv.
Tatsumi Fujinami. I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay? Okay. Taco Fuji, whatever his name was. I don't know him. I'll be honest. That's the name that I'm not very familiar with.
Well, we see one of the moves that he invented from Jake Christ on a weekly basis at Rockstar Pro, the Dragon Suplex.
Right.
The double chicken wing into a German suplex was created and copied by everybody. That Dragon Suplex. And then the Dragon Sleeper as well, which Planet Williams has been known to use on numerous occasions. So the man has had an effect on at least our local business.
Oh, yeah. And again, when I say that I don't know him, it's not that I don't think he was deserving of going in. Based on what I've heard in the past 24 hours, obviously it sounds, like the guy is definitely worthy, for somebody to be put over by Nature Boy Ric Flair just like that. He doesn't do that, with a lot of people. So, sure, absolutely. Put him in.
It was really, really hard understanding him. I know the accent. I was hoping that if they were going to allow him time to speak, I've never heard him speak before. I've seen a few of his matches, but I was hoping that he would at least have a stronger. I didn't want him to sound like Khali,
right?
So that was a tad bit disappointing, but at least he was brief.
Well, that was it. I mean, he said what, 5-6 sentences max, and I was okay with that. Right. I understood him enough to know what he was trying to get across, and he made it short and sweet. I was good.
So, moving on from Tatsumi Fujinami, we go to whom should have closed the show, in my humble opinion. Oh
yeah, thinking, Macho Man. Well, look, I understand why they didn't have him close the show. He wasn't there.
Very true.
It's the fact. I mean, and God rest his soul, but the Macho Man wasn't there to accept the award. And let's be honest, Lanny Poffo's weird. Okay, he's just a weird dude, and I just don't think the night would have culminated as well having Lanny Poffo close the show as it did having the Click come out on the stage, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Very true. Very true. I don't know. I was listening to Lanny on Chris Jericho's podcast, and Macho Man had always said that it was going to be the Poffo family because the Von Erich family was inducted as a family, and he thought that the Poffos were good enough.
Right.
And then after Lanny passed, the senior passed, and then the Macho passed. Then the younger Lanny, he had said on the podcast, "Look, Mom, I'm the oldest brother now.
Yeah,
I get to make the decisions."
Right.
And as much as I loved Randy, not allowing him to go in is being intentionally cruel to the wrestling fans that loved him.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was really well said.
Absolutely.
Hogan as the inductor. Thoughts?
Okay. This is where we talk business. Okay? Because who do you get that brings more that brings more eyes to it than Hogan? Whether you like it or you hate it that they put him in, you have an emotional response to it. And I think that's the point that you have to make there.
I would have accepted Ted DiBiase.
Okay.
I would have accepted plenty of people.
All right, but your average person who might watch wrestling a couple times a year, do they even still know who Ted DiBiase is?
Do they have the network?
What, were they watching last night?
And, that's the point. The average person that only watches wrestling a couple of times a year, I don't think they have the network. I think the fans that do watch wrestling all the time are the ones that have the network and know who Ted DiBiase is.
Right. Look, I mean, okay, anybody who is a wrestling fan who follows it is going to know who the $1 Million Man was. I'm not disputing that, but I think that there are people who watch wrestling once or twice a year, and WrestleMania weekend is definitely one of them. Okay, and it's probably cheaper, to get the network for a month or two instead of paying $69.99 for WrestleMania.
Very true.
Because you get all that content. There's a lot of extra content that you get over that weekend.
Very true.
I've been having this argument with everybody about the network here lately because I think that you get so much extra. And look, I'm not under contract with the WWE. I'm not trying to sell you the network for $9.99.
Are you kidding me? I barely get to watch the network, but the fact that I get to watch all of the pay-per-views for $9.99 a month as opposed to $69.99, that's the main reason why I get it.
And that's my point, though. So for $9.99 a month, your average wrestling fan might have it.
Oh, I guess so. That's a fair enough point. Again, on the Jericho podcast, Hogan was on there. Did you hear that one?
I didn't.
Hogan tells a story that during TNA, after he had been remarried, after he had had his multiple back surgeries, and that horrible match with Abyss,
right.
He was at the doctor's office getting a checkup on his back.
I've heard this story.
And Macho bursts in and and they apparently make amends. Whether or not it's true, who knows?
Right.
But apparently there was some kind of amends made between the two. So I thought he did a good job. He used the word intense way too much.
Yeah.
For somebody who's as polished of a speaker as Hogan is, I docked him points on that one because it just seemed, it didn't seem as professional. Now, Alundra Blaze seemed professional. Shawn Michaels seemed professional.
Man, hilarious.
Even Daniel Bryan seemed professional. A guy who is not noted
right.
for his mic skills,
right.
even though he's much better than people give him credit for. From a business perspective, I look at things, especially from a degree of mass comm and public
right.
speaking. I docked him on that one. Larry, he seemed, whether he was attempting to feign, humility or not, it wasn't as polished of a speech as I would have liked to have heard. But it is what it is. Before we get into the person that closed the show, I almost forgot to take a couple of steps backward here. Well, actually, I think it was actually Arnold who... Was it Arnold who closed the show or no?
No, Arnold was right before Nash, yeah.
Well, let's go back to the most important one of the night, the Warrior Award.
Yes.
Even somebody as cruel and vindictive as you, that had to tear you up.
I think you throw those words around pretty loosely, but it was rough, and I say that just from a standpoint of being able to keep that composure a little bit. I'm not the type of person that, breaks up very easily. But, when there's a kid involved, especially somebody like Connor, I've got, a nephew that's right around that age, and I don't have kids of my own, but I really like this kid, and, of course it just hits home. And I know you have a son, so I'm sure it hit home for you.
Oh, very much so. Same age.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, you hear about the stories about how full of life he was, and you hear about those things. And here's what it does for me. It puts things in perspective of whenever I feel like I'm having a bad day or whenever I feel like things aren't fair. You don't know what that life not being fair is until you see something like that. But then for him to be an inspiration for so many people, that tugs at the heartstrings. Very
much so. I thought, it's not even fair to grade it on a business perspective.
No,
but
I don't want to.
Still, everybody all of their speeches I was enraptured by.
Dana Warrior did a wonderful job.
I was held captive by everybody, even Connor's father.
Yeah, he did well.
He did very well. And God, as a dad myself, I don't know if I could have held it together.
No.
I don't know if I could have held it together, but it was one of... WWE doesn't get enough credit for the classy things that they do.
No. Because they don't brag about them.
Right.
That's the thing. And that is one thing that I really do admire about the organization. For all the negatives, there is a ton of public outreach, the Make-A-Wish foundations, the charity events, all those different things. But JP, and I think something that you were going to get at, and I even said this, on Facebook last night, but that moment made me proud to be a wrestling fan.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Now a moment that, the celebrity wing. I mean, it's one of those things where from a business perspective, I can totally see the value in bringing in celebrities so you can get across demo appeal.
Well, here's the thing. Who sponsored the show last night?
Was it the Terminator Genesis movie?
Terminator Genesis.
Yes. Yeah.
So they got money for it.
Yeah,
that was
much.
The thing. Arnold's movie. So look, from a business perspective, it makes total sense. You have a sponsor. True. I mean, we have sponsors at Rockstar, right? People who help us pay the bills.
Very true.
So they are doing the same thing. Whether you need it or you don't, which is a $1 billion company, you're going to take any money you can get. And Arnold's a big enough name that, again, to my point about Hogan earlier, he's going to draw eyes to the product.
Yeah, but wasn't it great when they talked about his record as like everybody cheered him for everything celebrity related that he did, but the second they brought up that he was the governor, they booed his ass hardcore.
If they were in any other state, that wouldn't have happened, but they were in California.
The governor of California.
Yeah. Everything else was fine.
So we move on to the man who closed the show, Big Daddy Cool, Big Sexy, Diesel, Kevin Nash. First we had the inductor. Shawn Michaels, who was brilliant.
I was laughing hysterically at a lot of the things that he had to say. When he talked about Kevin Nash pulling him into the shower, that was probably the line of the night for me.
And what's great is, he's one of those guys that can get across a message. Like, let's be fair. Your show here.
Yeah.
You're the one who's paying for this.
Sure.
What's the language level you're going to allow?
Look, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I do with Rockstar. Let's try to keep it PG-13 because there might be kids listening.
Very true. All right. So I tell this to Aaron Williams all the time. And I draw the correlation because Sean's a man of faith, as is Aaron Williams. Sean is able to communicate with facials alone what a bunch of current wrestlers couldn't even do in words.
Absolutely.
And I tell this to Aaron Williams, I say that for somebody who does not curse with his facials and when he gets mad and comes back in a match, he's very good at saying F you to his opponent without ever saying the word.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think that's something we'll talk about on another day, people's ability to emote.
And for the business perspective, that's a big topic that I want to touch on because I think you drive away a lot of potential ticket holders when you have too much profanity, when you have too much things like that, but that's a whole other topic.
All right. Well, so Sean was brilliant. He brought up the fact about guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
He brought up the fact that Kevin Nash was, treated it like a business, which is what our goal is to discuss on this. Give me a little bit more on your thoughts on not only Michaels but Nash as well.
A lot of people, crap on Hall and Nash, for the things that they did. And again, look, you and I were not in the room, when they had their conversations with Vince, when they had their conversations with Bischoff. We don't know what was said and what wasn't. But again, to Shawn Michaels' point about treating it like a business, I always like the term, what Nash said. He's like, look, in this business, you can make friends or you can make money. I wanted to make money. And that's it. I don't understand why. Well, okay, there's two sides to this. If you are getting into the business for your career, meaning that this is what you're going to do for a living, why wouldn't you do what they did? I would in a heartbeat. If you can have the opportunity to make millions of dollars, set up your family for success, set up their financial future, why wouldn't you do it? But then the flip side of that, you have guys who, they do this because it's their passion, and then they end up being successful and millionaires and things along those lines. So it is a double-edged sword, but I do not fault any of the actions of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall until later in their WCW careers, when they kind of the money was the only thing that was important, and the entertainment value fell through the floor.
Yeah, well, I think with Hall, a big part of
was his demons.
His demons is something that affected that. So But, I mean, he's doing great. According to DDP, Hall wants to be the Kevin Dunn of DDP's wellness center and all of the productions that they do. He's interested in being the behind-the-scenes producer. So
Yeah. You know, and again, since we're talking business, that DDP Yoga, you know, real quick, just to touch on that, you know, I want to know how much of what he is selling the public is actually true when it comes to his recovery stories. You know, as far as Jake the Snake, as far as Scott Hall.
well, it's all. I mean, they're putting out the video, the film, the return or the revival of Jake the Snake.
Right.
They're putting it out as an actual indie film.
I understand that, but you and I both have been around Jake the Snake Roberts in the past 12 months.
Yes.
And I'm not going to sit here and, you know, open in too many cans of worms, but in my interaction with him, I don't know how sober he actually was.
I don't know. I've been around a lot of addicts in my life as well.
Yeah.
That's something that has been part of my own personal history, and I know that, you know, you trade vices for other vices, and you just try to live with the lesser of all the demons. So.
Right.
Nash definitely moved the needle.
Oh, in a huge way.
I think from a business perspective, yes. I think from a fan wrestling perspective, there are people that could have gone in before him. But from a business perspective, most definitely.
Well, yeah, but, you know, then you talk about guys that probably should have went in after him, though. You know, I mean, you talk about guys like Edge, you know, who I don't feel that Edge should have been put in when he was. You know, do I think he should have been put in? Sure. But at 30-something years old and, you know, right after his retirement, when there's guys who have done so much in the past, I don't see that.
True, but that was a business decision, I would think, because he was more known.
He was hot at the time.
So,
yeah.
But all in all, I think a well-deserving class. Zbyszko is kind of on the periphery for me. The whole celebrity wing really does nothing for me whatsoever. Rikishi, again, he's on the periphery, but everybody else to me was spot on.
Right.
So since we still have time, let's move on to tonight's card.
Yeah.
This will probably end up being posted the day after or a day or two after WrestleMania.
Absolutely.
So we'll find out whether or not our thoughts and predictions are correct.
We can touch on that next time.
Very true. So we go to the opening, which is going to be the WWE Tag Team Championship match. Originally, it was going to be the Andre the Giant Battle Royale, but they switched it around. So on the kickoff show, you've got Tyson Kidd and Cesaro versus Los Matadors versus the Usos versus the New Day. Now, I'm curious as to whether or not Xavier Woods is supposed to be the analogous version of El Torito and Natalia.
Yeah. I don't know. I got to be honest. Other than Cesaro and Kidd in that match, there's nobody that I like at all.
You're not a fan of the Usos at all?
Okay. Here's my problem with a lot of the direction that WWE is going on today. Okay. I see WWE in 2015 as going back to early 90s WWF. Okay. Very gimmicky, very almost cartoony. Mm-hmm. And the Usos are like that for me. They're like a cartoon character. And it just seems hokey to me. But you got to remember, I grew up during the Attitude Era.
So did I. We're probably around the same age, but
right.
I mean, if you go back and look at the history, I mean, what's so different from them and the Head Shriekers?
No,
you know?
That's my point, though. That's my point. Is I didn't like that type of thing.
Okay.
You know, and this is a me perspective. I don't like the cartoony. Who am I thinking of? Papa Shangos, you know, any of those guys. You know, it just doesn't do it for me. The silly gimmicks.
Now, Tyson Kidd.
Yeah.
Debuts in WWECW. Mm-hmm. And then finally, D.H. Smith comes in. They form the new foundation.
Right.
They have the WrestleMania moment during Bret Hart's match against Vince McMahon.
Right.
And all sorts of great stuff. And then Harry, departs the company.
Right.
Which I believe the Killer Elite Squad, which is the tag team he wrestles as part of with Lance Hoyt in Japan, is going to be debuting for Ring of Honor soon, as a little bit of a side note. But Tyson has been floundering.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's his involvement with Total Divas or what he's been doing on NXT. But, I mean, they finally have done something with him that they should have been doing for a long time because he's so freaking good.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have his own voice. I think that was the problem. You know, if you don't have a voice, and I don't mean your mic skills, you know, but I just mean be able to reach out and grab somebody and bring them in with your character, you know, you're dead. You know, and I think that was his problem. He was very vanilla. And, you know, I think, you know, his uncle was that way, obviously Bret Hart, you know, but Bret was in a different era, and it was, you know, well, but that's the argument, though. There's a lot of people that say that Bret really never drew money. A lot of people say that. Yeah, but Ric Flair said that in his book. You know, he was the champion during a downswing in the business.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. It's a matter of perspective, because if everything is running on all cylinders, then the champion looks good by default.
Right.
However, was it Bret that brought things into a downswing, or was it the business that was in a downswing and Bret kept it afloat where it was at?
No, I think that the business was in a downswing. At the time, the level of talent was in a downswing in the company, and Bret was at the time the best they had.
Very true.
But you can't tell me that when Shawn came in with his unbelievable charisma that things didn't start to pick up.
Well, I don't know. 96 was pretty down, too. I mean, the NWO was crushing them. Shawn, as far as a prolonged main event draw, he was not as strong as other champions. I mean, Shawn, Bret, and Nash were not high-dollar drawing champions.
No, absolutely. But again, to that point, they were still down. But they also ushered in, you know, what would be known as the Attitude Era.
Okay.
I mean, that's my point, is if it wouldn't be for them, you know, you have to have a spark plug to start the car.
Well, you were the one that mentioned that Bret wasn't a high-drawing champion.
Right.
So I was only drawing the corollary between their championship runs.
Right. No, I understand.
And Michael's first championship run, which was pretty much all of 1996, you know, was not as successful as many people fondly remember it to be.
Right.
Then again, he was facing off against Vader and Sid and everything when they're past their prime.
Yeah, okay. One other thing I'm going to say about that, but you also, the eyes had already been taken off the product. You know, had you had the same sort of, you know, the caliber of the matches were there. I think the characters were there, but again, the eyes had been taken off the product, and it took them making a lot of noise with Mike Tyson, you know, in 97, you know, in order to get that back.
Let's move on to the Andre the Giant Battle Royale Memorial. Easy for me to say. You got Miz, Mizdow, Kane, Big Show, Rowan, Mark Henry, Curtis, Axelmania, Ryback, Fandango, Adam Rose, Zack Ryder, Jack Swagger, The Ascension, who were awesome in NXT, but they have totally, just screwed the pooch with them.
Yeah.
Primetime players who I actually was starting to like before they broke them up.
Yeah.
They were actually gelling. Let's see here. Eric Rowan has written twice on this website that I'm reading. Sin Cara, Goldust, Heath Slater, and Hideo Itami, who is from NXT.
Yeah.
Most of us know him as Kenta, the originator of the GTS, which he won his qualifying match with the GTS.
You got to
finally.
See it.
Yes, I did.
Yes, that was great.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, I reposted that on Facebook this morning. That made me excited.
So, last year's big winner was Cesaro.
Absolutely.
Coming out of it, Cesaro gets paired up with Heyman, goes on a really decent heel run, and then Lesnar comes back for his contracted dates. Heyman gets pulled out from underneath of Cesaro like a rug. Cesaro falls on his ass and into obscurity until they decide to go with him to make the tag team champions a wrestling title.
See, I heard a little different on the Heyman being pulled out from under him. The interviews that I've heard with Heyman, he kind of referred to it as, you just can't put magically manager A with wrestler B and expect it to work. I think Heyman pulled the plug on that.
Well, the end result was he was on an upswing.
Oh, no, absolutely. That's not the debate.
And Heyman leaving damaged Cesaro. I mean, Austin has been crying for months that he thinks Cesaro is somebody who can shoulder a lot of weight as far as being a top star in the company. But for some reason, people aren't getting behind him. Now, is this the catalyst for one of these names? And if so, whom do you think? For me, I can easily see Mizdow taking this one, as I could see Jack Swagger if they wanted to try and get behind him again. I think Hideo Itami is going to get a few eliminations, have a big hope moment, which will be good to get more eyes on the product of NXT.
Absolutely. It all depends on how quickly they want to get Kenta. He's always going to be Kenta to me.
Right.
But it all depends on how quickly they want to put him on the main roster, too. Because if they really want to use him and put him over, then at that point I could see them, actually winning, the Battle Royal.
That, I don't know. They had Bo Dallas come up for the Royal Rumble. He was the one they eliminated back in 2013.
Right.
He eliminated Barrett, and then they got into a small feud, and then they shipped him back down to NXT. So this might be a testing the waters. I don't think that. I don't know if they're gonna get behind him that hardcore yet. I think it's probably this is a test to see how people are going to react.
Right. Well, I just see him as being a little bit different, just because, again, with the the huge Japan career that he's had. But I know a lot of guys have had that as well. So this is just me speculating.
So who's your pick for? Well, let's go back for a second. Tag titles. Who's your pick?
It's probably going to be the Usos.
I'm going to go with Cesaro and Kid to retain.
Okay, good.
Definitely not the New Day, though.
No, absolutely not.
And what's interesting, though, is when the tag titles were united, the WWE Tag Championships and the World Tag Championships.
Yeah.
So it was the Undisputed Tag Team Championships, the ones that they're carrying right now. The first team to win those championships were the Carlitos, were the Colones.
Oh, that's right.
Primo and Carlito Colon, and Primo happens to be one of the Matadors.
Matadors.
So he's no stranger to holding that one as well either.
Like I said, I just can't get behind them either. Too gimmicky for me.
Although the WLC match between Torito and what's his name?
That ended up being a Hornswoggle. That ended up being a lot better than I thought it would.
Well, he's been saying. Well, I heard an interview with him. He's like, "Give me a chance to wrestle, please.
Yeah,
let me wrestle. I'm a trained wrestler."
Right.
So, Andre the Giant. Battle Royal Memorial thingamajigger.
Well, you know what? I said what my opinion was. I'm going to go with Kenta.
All right. I'm thinking Mizdow is going to get the push.
Okay.
We move on to the Divas Championship. Nikki Bella. No. It's not a championship match. Yeah. It's the Bellas versus Paige and AJ Lee, i.e., we've got to put the women in there so people don't think that we're misogynists.
Look, I'm one of them right now, honestly. I think that the Bellas have upped their game in the past year.
Incredibly so, yes.
I really do. I mean, I'm not saying they're at the same caliber, but good God, I mean, compared to where they were a couple of years ago to now, I mean, it's night and day.
Well, look who they're dating and married to.
Well, yeah, absolutely, but I don't necessarily want my dentist's wife to do my root canal. It's just one of those things. But here's my point to that though is I think that the girls at NXT are causing the girls on the main roster to up their game.
Yes.
They don't want to lose their spot. That's the point. If you have these girls down there that are just blowing it away every week, you've got Charlotte, you've got all the
Sasha Banks,
absolutely. You've got all these girls who are just hungry and they want to get to that main card, and you're up there doing slap fights. No.
Well, and then this, and that's one that I'm not sure about because Natalya can go.
No, absolutely.
And they watered her down.
Mm.
You look at Charlotte when they had her debut, and she jobbed to Natalya. They brought her up for one match on Raw, and they jobbed her to Natalya, which Triple H says is there was debates about that the entire time. And Emma
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember the first NXT big show that they had? It was Emma versus Paige for the NXT Women's Championship, which they call a Women's Championship, not a Divas Championship.
Right.
And it was a freaking amazing match. So I don't. What I'm trying to say is that I don't know if it's they're allowing them to finally show their skills or they are upping their game. That's something to take into consideration. But I feel there are a lot more women wrestlers now than there have been, and I feel that wrestlers are going to know how to tell a story and keep the crowd's attention.
Right.
If they let them. I mean, WrestleMania 17, Jazz, Lita, and Trish, triple threat for the women's title. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was one of the best matches on the card. It was absolutely incredible. If they let them, I think the women can make them a lot more money than simply being eye candy.
I agree, though. I mean, but think about when Trish and Lita main evented Raw.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was an amazing match.
Fantastic.
You know? And that's kind of my point, though. Look, I think there's a lot of guys out there, if they listen to this, that are going to agree with what I said, and then the girls are going to think I'm sexist. I've never enjoyed women's wrestling. Okay? I never have. Now, let me rephrase that. Unless it's good, which has been very few and far between, especially on the indies. Okay? I don't see a lot of matches. Now, I think Nevaeh can go. I think Lufisto, I think some of the girls that are at Rockstar, and several others around the area. But for the most part, it ends up being much less impactful because you're talking about they weigh half of what a lot of these guys do. So they don't hit the mat as hard. It takes me out of the action unless they do it well. And the girls at NXT are doing it well. And it makes me want to see them. I've honestly been more excited about these NXT shows to see the women, and again, not for the eye candy, for the wrestling ability. I'm a huge fan of Charlotte, and I just think that if they do it the right way, that this could actually be a draw for them instead of all of our guys need a break, so we're going to send the divas out there for 20 minutes.
Intercontinental Championship ladder match. Bad News Barrett, the champion, defends against Daniel Bryan, Dean Ambrose, R-Truth, Stardust, Luke Harper, and Dolph Ziggler.
I think this is their opportunity to, shut up the fans about Daniel Bryan. So I think Daniel Bryan wins, just to give them something to cheer about and say yes.
I kind of think so as well.
Yeah.
He's won 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches. So he's got a little bit of history there. I am disappointed that the Stardust versus Goldust feud did not evolve into a WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
I thought that could have been very good. I know that's what both of the Rhodes brothers wanted. They've said so in numerous interviews in the past. If Bryan doesn't win, then Ziggler has to.
I would agree with that.
Dean Ambrose, you and I know, mocks very well from the area and definitely could do very well with it. But the fans, from a business perspective, want Ziggler or Bryan more than him right now.
Right.
And I don't think losing this match hurts his credibility.
I don't either. I mean, because again, this type of match, I mean, they have one of these at every WrestleMania. This, high flying
car crash match.
Car crash match, absolutely. And typically, everybody in the match comes out better for it, at least in the fans' eyes, because they do crazy things. I mean, think about back to the TLC matches back at like WrestleMania 17 and things like that.
Right.
The Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian all came out better for it. Didn't matter who won.
Very true. Very true. Let's roll through this a little bit quicker here so we can at least talk about some Rockstar.
Yeah, I want to at least do 10-15 minutes of Rockstar.
Seth Rollins with J&J Security versus Randy Orton. J&J Security has been one of my favorite things on Raw lately.
I think it's an extra dimension that needed to be there. It's these little gnats that are flying around. All the wrestlers have to swat them away before they can get to Seth Rollins. It's great.
It's very good. They've been holding a lot of they've been doing a lot of good stuff. Who do you think's going to go over though?
I think Seth goes over, and I think that because they've done so much with him, it just keeps him in that limelight picture. But I think he goes over dirty.
United States Championship: Rusev versus Cena.
Oh God. I know Cena's going to kick out at least 15 times during the match, probably at one. But that's I don't know. It's just I'm not a Cena fan. I see honestly I see Rusev going over. I think they keep him intact through this.
Cena cannot tap out. If Rusev goes over, it'll be due to a pass out or a referee stoppage.
Something like that.
From a personal perspective, I agree.
Yeah.
I want to see Rusev remain undefeated for quite some time because it will give the same kind of rub that the streak from Undertaker gave to Lesnar to whomever beats him. That being said, though, from a business perspective, Cena got destroyed by Lesnar.
True.
He's been getting one-upped by the Authority on a regular basis. He already lost once to Rusev. Does another loss hurt his marketability?
At this point, he's John Cena. I mean, I don't think it matters really his win-loss record at this point.
Hogan got booed and then turned heel. The only time Cena is going to get turned heel is if his sales drop.
No, absolutely.
It has nothing to do with what people think, whether they like him or not. As long as his merch numbers are high, they're going to keep him a face.
And they've said that for years.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember them actually showing, the stats on whose merch sales were the highest. We're not going to turn this guy heel. Are you kidding me? He's a cash cow.
Exactly.
I mean, I think CM Punk's the only person that beat him in merchandise sales at any given time. So you're right. And then it is the business side that we're talking about right here.
Exactly.
I can't fault them for that, but I think that I guess everything must be in the black as far as the money right now.
Sure.
They're making money, they're printing money.
Now, who does Cena go to next?
Well, that's the problem is I think that I think a Cena Ambrose feud would be, I know they touched on that before, but I think that would be interesting and pull out a different dynamic.
I think that if Rollins loses to Orton tonight and then cashes in after, Reigns either narrowly loses or whatever happens, and then Rollins ends up with a championship at the end of the night, I think Rollins and Cena would be decent.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's anybody with enough credibility for him to go to after this. If he doesn't win.
Right.
So it's a conundrum, but we'll see what they do. Who do you want to pick? You want to go with Rusev?
I'm going with Rusev.
I want Rusev to win, but I think they're going to put it on Cena.
Okay.
Undertaker, Bray Wyatt.
Okay. I think a lot of I'm interested to see how the crowd reacts to the Undertaker tonight. I really am. And not that I think everybody's going to turn on him, but if the interest is there like it has been, because of the streak's over,
True.
And that's a whole nother dimension to this one that is different than any other WrestleMania that most of us has watched in our lifetime.
Very true.
This is different. Now, I think Bray, I got to tell you, I am in love with this guy from a communication standpoint. From his promos are gold. I mean, and he's done a good job. Think about this. Who else can you think of in history who has done the entire build for a WrestleMania match by themselves? The Undertaker hasn't been here at all. Every bit of interest that's in this is from Bray Wyatt's verbal skills, and that is impressive to me.
Well, then again, Undertaker is the Undertaker,
No, absolutely. But again,
I mean, if he built up a match against somebody who did not have the bona fides of the Undertaker,
right,
that would truly be impressive. But, building up a match, you got to almost build yourself up enough to make and the fact that Undertaker isn't responding keeps giving you more credibility in the fans' eyes. I think it's going to be a very, very physical, very intense match. I wonder if we're going to get any dives out of Undertaker. Last I heard, one of his shoulders is hanging on by one tendon.
Yeah.
And he had to go to the hospital last year.
Right.
Vince actually left WrestleMania to go to the hospital with him. So, I think Undertaker is going to win.
Right.
I don't think Bray needs the rub at this point or deserves the rub at this point.
Right.
but I think that he's going to come out smelling like roses after this matchup.
Yeah. Well, they have to do that because, again, he's got to continue to be on the road for the
Right.
next year where Undertaker's going to go home.
Sting versus Triple H.
I don't care what anybody says. I'm excited about this match.
Me too, but Sting's got to win.
Yes, Sting's got to win. And I'm predicting that Sting comes out actually looking really good in this match.
Oh, are you kidding me? He's probably been training, and working on things like crazy.
Yeah. Well, and look, Ric Flair wrestled his last match in 2008 at WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels. Okay. Am I wrong?
You are.
Where am I wrong?
After he retired at WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels, he wrestled Jay Lethal 1,000 times, went down to Australia with Hulk Hogan.
Last WWE match.
Okay, there you go.
Leave me alone, JP. Freaking perfectionist. What I'm talking about
You
is in the
hired
WWE.
me to help you with this podcast.
Yeah, and I'm regretting that. But anyway, the JP, look, what I'm talking about is his last big match that most wrestling fans are going to remember, and that's 2008 WrestleMania 24. Okay? So he, with Shawn Michaels, and he says that Shawn Michaels led him through the match and helped him, which I probably did, but he's Ric Flair. He was able to put on an amazing match. Sting is one of those guys that I put up there with guys like Ric Flair, like guys, who, the Steamboats, and obviously, from that level of talent. And he's in there with a guy like Triple H.
Oh, yeah.
Who's another guy with that talent.
It's going to be a fantastic match.
It's going to be great.
And they're not going to tell. They're not going to. Well, the sledgehammers and the bats are going to come out eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the wrestling part of it is going to. And for the fans listening to this right now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but whenever there's a car crash match, look at the match that follows it next and tell me whether or not they try and do a car crash to keep up with what they just had on, or if they slow things down and try and tell a story using psychology. And I think this is the beginning of this match. The first half of this match is all going to be psychology. It's not going to be car crash. It's not going to be hardcore, anything like that. It's going to be two masters feeling each other out, and they're going to start it off 100% athletic, is the way I see it going down. Still, though, Sting comes out on top, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think Sting wins, but again, when you're as good as both of these guys and you have the name that these guys do, you don't have to do a lot, and it's going to get over.
WWE World Heavyweight Championship, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. A big theory that has been tossed around is that, first of all, Lesnar re-signed.
Yeah, with that, which that's huge as far as the anticipation factor.
Now, it depends upon what Vince wants. Whether he wants Lesnar to remain a heel or not. Because if he listens to the fans, which he says he does, Reigns does not get the same pop as Lesnar.
No.
Lesnar is getting over because he's a badass. And it has been talked about a lot that Heyman could turn on Lesnar and join Reigns because he said he's known him since he was a kid. And Reigns could get the win.
I think in that situation, you'd have to almost do a double turn. I think Reigns then has to be a heel.
Exactly.
And Reigns would work better as a heel.
That's the plan. That's the idea, is that if Heyman goes with him, Reigns is automatically a heel.
Right. And that would work because the crowd wants to boo him anyway.
Right.
I want to boo him, and it's just for the fact. I mean, and when I was a kid, I feel like I would have liked Roman Reigns. He's a bigger guy. He does all that stuff because I liked the bigger guys. When I was a kid, I liked Kevin Nash. I liked Hulk Hogan.
I think his build before he went out with a hernia surgery was very organic,
right.
And I liked him before then.
Right.
But then they started giving him the Super Cena push.
Well, and that's that push is the thing. Everybody who's been anybody has had a push, but this one feels like it had to be put into turbo drive, and they had to shove them down our throats.
I always tell people in my everyday shoot job that when I have information to provide to them, I say, look, if you want me to go over the details with you right now, I will. But I'm the last person that wants to have a sales pitch thrown my way when I'm not ready for it.
Right.
people don't want to be sold on something. They want to go and find out and learn about something and then organically come to their decision.
Mm-hmm.
And these giant pushes is the same as a car salesman hovering over your shoulder for 30 minutes.
Well, and let's be honest, why is Walmart the number one retailer in the world? Nobody bothers you.
Very true. Very true. Still, in the end, though, who do you think is going to come out on top?
You know, I'm going to go just with a personal preference, and I got to go Lesnar. And I do. I got to go Lesnar, but I'm a Paul Heyman guy. So there's my decision.
Really? You, a Paul Heyman guy?
You didn't know?
Well, I mean, you both do have the same hairstyle.
Oh.
But that, and I think there's a few affectations that you have in your speech delivery that I think are similar to his. I think Lesnar's going to retain as well. If there is a God, he will. I think that there's going to be a lot of money made that way. On the flip side, though, I do want to bring up the point that a lot of fans have not liked the fact, even though Lesnar has re-signed and it's for a limited number of dates, you see all these different people complaining about the fact that the championship is not being defended at every pay-per-view or regularly,
pay-per-view,
or
right.
every pay-per-view in general.
Right.
So, for the fact that somebody might be able to defend it more regularly, I think there's a shot of Reigns, but based on this match alone, not big picture, I think Lesnar. But thinking big picture, I think that there's a strong case to be made for Reigns.
Look, I think the point about him not defending it on a regular basis is valid. I really do. Because I would like to see the WWE Championship be defended at every big show. I think it should be. I think you should. It's nice. Remember when you might have a title match on Raw.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. That was exciting when there was a title match, and when there was a title switch on a Monday show or something like that. Like right now, that there's not going to be a new world champion on Raw.
Pretty much.
It's just that simple. I mean, there's a lot less unpredictability in wrestling today than there used to be. And I think the unpredictability factor was what really sold tickets back in the late 90s.
It's the business model with a company that is on the New York Stock Exchange.
Right.
That is heavily subsidized by NBC Universal. So there's a big difference. It's just like when you take a comic book like Deadpool.
Yeah.
And they're going to make a movie out of it. Anybody that's ever read the Deadpool comic knows this movie should be rated R.
Right.
They're going to make it PG-13 so they have the possibility of selling merchandise.
Right. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into indie wrestling. Okay, I really do. Because let's think about that for a second. Like you just said, WWE, they're subsidized, they're a publicly traded company. I think that's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, there's actually been an upswing in the interest in independent wrestling lately, because there are no other options and people are begging for something different, something exciting.
Right.
And that's something that I've seen lately with, again, obviously being at Rockstar for the past year, but again, being to CZW shows in the past year and these other, some of the super indies, I'm seeing a big shift in the interest going to the indies.
All right. Speaking of indies, you and I both work for Rockstar Pro.
Yep.
I know that you have been around with a couple of other feds as well. And let's make sure that the people realize that you are a trained, or were a trained professional wrestler.
Ooh, the cat's out of the bag now. Yeah, I got into professional wrestling back around 2005. So we're talking 10 years, that I've been around. I did take a hiatus for 3 or 4 years, but originally I trained to be a professional wrestler. I went up and down the roads with a lot of the guys that are current top level members of Rockstar Pro.
And you and I first met at a now defunct promotion, but the promotion that is the namesake for the title that your client Alex Colon now currently wears, American Lucha Corps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was a promotion that the American Lucha Corps belt was their signature title.
Yep.
The promotion closed down. However, the title has moved to Indiana's IPW, moved to HWA as well. I know that Dave Chris defended it in New York, and now it's regularly contested at Rockstar Pro. So you have a lot of experience in the business inside the ring and outside the ring.
Right.
Well, let's look at Rockstar Pro, more specifically the upcoming card for the iPay-per-view Spring Break, which will be on April 3rd. Let's see here. We've got a lot of tag team matches going on. I'm not exactly sure if we're going to be having a contest in that regard, but well, let's take your client, for example.
Yeah.
Alex Colon,
Yeah.
the current.
Well, let's back up here for a second because the iPay-per-view is coming up, but we still have to get through Wednesday. Okay.
Very true.
Wednesday it's going to be, OI4K, Dave and Jake Christ, versus my client Alex Colon,
and somebody who you've been pretty chummy with lately, the end of the world, Jake Oman.
Jake's come in with a different attitude, and I really respect it. I think he's more interested now in doing his thing than, again, just trying to pandering to the audience. So I respect that.
You know what? I got to agree. I actually have been enjoying his work a lot. He's become kind of a dick backstage.
It depends on who you are.
Well, Bilbo. But no, I mean he's a consummate professional. He is world traveled as well. Originally, this matchup was supposed to be Dave Christ and Tommy End, one half of the Sumerian Death Squad. However, Tommy will be coming to Rockstar Pro on April 8th.
Yeah, he had a conflict of scheduling. I wonder how that happened.
Really? You serious?
I'm not going to confirm or deny anything, JP.
Jeez. It sounds like something you do anyways. So we have that as our big main event coming up at this Wednesday's Rockstar Pro taping of Amped. Jake Christ, Dave Christ, they're the CZW World Tag Team Champions, have not been teaming as of late at Rockstar Pro. Do you think that benefits your clients or not?
Look, these guys, let's be honest, they're brothers. They've been tag teaming since before they were in the wrestling business. They know each other inside and out. Here's what I think is going to be their downfall on Wednesday. They both have a lot of other things going on right now. Obviously, Jake, I think we've all seen the promos on the Beyond the Rail web forum. Jake is going back and forth with Ron Mathis like crazy. Yeah. He's not looking at this tag match. He's not even looking at his match with Shane Douglas. He's looking at Ron Mathis. Those two are at each other's throats, and that's going to keep his focus off of this match coming up. Now, Dave got dropped on his head on Wednesday.
True.
Took a driver on concrete, couldn't get up, and he could not respond to the 20 count. It's just that simple.
You yourself admitted it. I mean, you were standing there with Flex. I saw the tape. You hatched your master plan. It happened on the outside of the ring. Thusly, it was all legal.
I've said before, whether you're dirty or clean or whatever everybody likes to say, I think that's all really in the eye of the beholder. I'm really, look, I'm a businessman, and if you're not in business to get results, if you're not in business to be successful, you won't be.
Like you said, you were a fan of Diesel, Kevin Nash.
Absolutely.
There you go. Moving on to Friday.
Mm-hmm.
April 3rd, Nevaeh, you said that she can go, going up against Samantha Heights.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic to me because, let's just be honest, as far as I'm concerned, Nevaeh, from a wrestling perspective, outdoes Samantha Height at every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sam has been traveling a lot more than a lot of people know. She's been getting more bookings than a lot of people know.
Sure.
As a wrestler.
Yes.
So she is getting better. She is getting experience. So anything can happen, but in that particular match, I got to go with Nevaeh.
I do as well. I don't think that Sam is there yet. I think, though, that this will probably be her strongest outing to date.
Yeah, but what's going on with Ike Turner, Kyle Maverick on the outside of the ring right now?
I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him.
I mean, I like Kyle, but man, he's blacked her eye a few times in the past couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that she ended up drop kicking him during a recent matchup as well, and I think that he's got a few shots to the pills on accident as well.
Yeah.
I think though Kyle is trying to. I think he's trying to convince the Rockstar Nation. More importantly, he's trying to convince himself that he belongs in the upper echelon.
Kyle's another guy who is, as far as I'm concerned, he's transforming a little bit. You know, this is a guy who, legit, let's talk real life, is pretty much a badass when it comes to like MMA, mixed martial arts.
He has had, I believe, 5 professional MMA fights and 2 professional boxing fights.
Right, but he absolutely does tough man contests.
Yeah,
different
100%. Yeah.
So the guy's pretty tough, and I would say in most indie locker rooms, he's a guy that could actually take some people out.
Definitely.
You know, and that's what I'm saying. But he, I feel, has tried to wrestle a style that's not conducive to his strengths, which is mixed martial arts.
Very true.
Now, I see a lot more coming out of him as far as the technical wrestling. I'm seeing more come out of him in submission holds and things along those lines.
That Brazilian necktie that he's been throwing on people has been no, I'm sorry, it's a Peruvian necktie is what they call it. It's absolutely beautiful.
And the problem with the thing with our business, if you're not comfortable in your own skin, the fans aren't going to accept you. And I think he is getting more comfortable, and it's going to come around.
Well, we talked about Dave and Jake being CCW Tag Team Champions. They won those belts from the Juicy product. JT Dunn and David Starr. David Starr coming back to Rockstar Pro to take on the Dark Star, Matt Taylor, who has been on a very, very successful winning streak as of late.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting match, and I'm going to kind of exclude myself from conversation on it because I don't know enough about David Starr to really comment on it. But I can definitely tell you that, look, Matt Taylor, he's a successful guy. He's been in this area on the indie scene for
12 years?
12 years, a decade, more than a decade. So I remember him back when I broke into the business, 10 years ago.
Right.
He can go. He's a absolutely, solid, wrestler. So I think this will be an interesting match to watch.
Moving on to a rematch with one of your new associates. I won't call him a client as of yet. We've got Sick and Twisted Zach Spades taking on End of the World Jake Omen.
There's some mind games going on here. If you watch, what they're talking about. And it was really interesting on Amped last week, listening to Jake Omen talk about the fact that Zach Spades was, before he was Zach Spades, he was in the audience as a Jake Omen fan. He was, coming up to him saying, I want to get into the wrestling, but it'll kind of reminded me of Larry Zbyszko comment about Bruno, But regardless, he's playing that card. He's playing, hey, boy, I was here before you ever were. Do you think you can actually take on the old man, is what it sounds like to me.
Is Jake Omen going to become a client of JTD Inc.?
I'm going to say no, okay? I'm open to it, but I don't think that Jake... Jake has a lot going on. Jake's, again, like you said, world traveler. I'd love to have him under the umbrella. But, we haven't had any official talk. So as of right now, I'm saying no.
Taking a step backwards to the ladies, is there room for a woman wrestler in JTD Inc.? If so, any names?
Right now, I'm going to say I'm open to it. But as of right now, I'm really focused on my current clients. I got, obviously Alex Colon, we're very busy. Kyle Craven, we've been, good grief. I mean, the traveling that I've done with Craven lately, to the WWE tryouts, to all these different events, actually supporting him. Because, yes, I am a manager, folks. I was driving him back and forth to the hotel. I picked him up, dropped him off to the WWE. It was a crazy couple of weeks, but regardless, we've got some irons in the fire there, and then Flex, a brand new talent, who really made an impact last week on Amped. But regardless, this guy, is an up and comer. We're trying to get him as many bookings as possible, get him the experience that he needs, because once it clicks with Flex, he's an elite athlete. It's going to be on like Donkey Kong. Speaking
of elite athletes, 2 former Rockstar Pro champions, Aaron Williams taking on the Lariat DJ Hyde. This is a rematch. The two faced each other at Unstoppable, and Williams, correct me if I'm wrong, did not come out on the winning side.
I don't believe he did. I always think it's interesting, when guys take on DJ, because let's be honest, we'll call a spade here. DJ is the owner of CZW. He's the booker, and I think that guys who have either tried out for CZW or, Aaron, who's going to be in the Best of the Best tournament.
April 11th.
Absolutely. There's a certain amount of, I'm going to show this guy what I can do. I'm going to show this guy that I deserve to be there. And I think Aaron is a guy who, despite a little bit goody-goody for my likes, but, he's a talented guy, and he's a true, he's a ring vet. So I think he deserves to be there.
I think that Aaron's going to come out on top on that one. And honestly, I think that DJ inserts himself into these positions because who better to judge talent than him?
Yeah, I'm not going to debate that at all.
You talked about Jake Christ taking on the former ECW World Champion Shane Douglas. It's billed as franchise versus franchise. Before I get your thoughts on that, we have another WCW legend, Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, taking on the Pitbull Ganger. This one, I am hoping, the way that I describe certain matches to people, some matches are ooh-ah, some matches are slam crash. This one, I have a feeling, is going to be a big thud.
Yeah.
And I hope it is a thud. I hope it's full of moments where you feel like somebody crushed somebody in a certain way, whether it be from a strike or a slam. That's what I want to see out of these two.
Well, I don't know if you've ever. Oh well, never mind. I know the answer to that. I've been in the ring with Ganger. I know what it's like to wrestle him, and I'll tell you that guy. It's not about doing anything pretty. He's gonna hit you. He's gonna smash you, and let's call this one a spade. Kevin Sullivan's getting a little bit up there in years. So I don't see him trying to do anything pretty either. These guys are going to have a slugfest, and it's not going to be pretty.
I agree. I think the Ganger has been on a roll, especially after his matchups with Matt Tremont.
Gross match. Gross.
Have
match.
You seen the pictures of his back? Look like hamburger meat.
I saw it live, man. So there's nothing.
It was horrendous. Franchise versus franchise. Jake Christ has been saying this might be his last match, but his blood's been boiling in that online feud with Mathis. Jake has shoulders that have been popping out of place, undiagnosed, but he believes he's had a broken neck in the past. He's been wrestling for 12 years.
Yeah.
Could this be his last match?
Well, look, it can be anybody's last match.
True.
It's let's be honest. I mean, we all know about the tragedy that happened in Mexico in the last couple of weeks.
Very true.
There are no guarantees that any of us come out of that ring unharmed. And that's a scary, scary thought. However, looking at this as a guy who has a stake in Rockstar Pro, I think Jake is looking past, like I said earlier, the franchise Shane Douglas, and that is a very dangerous thing to do when you have a guy with that much experience. Ron Mathis has his blood boiling. Ron Mathis has him upset because he talked about his family, on one of these promos. So the guy is really looking at Ron Mathis, and I don't think he's putting the effort that he should into Shane Douglas, and that could be a problem.
Jake has always risen to the occasion in my mind, and Shane Douglas is not working every week like Jake Christ is. You brought up the point about age. When it comes to Kevin Sullivan, I personally feel that Shane Douglas is not working regularly enough to overcome a Jake Christ, whether Jake is at the top of his game or preoccupied with somebody else. I'm going to go with Jake on this one.
Okay.
And then we go to the Rockstar Pro Championship. This will be a hardcore match between the current champion, Relentless Ron Mathis, and the Bulldozer, Matt Tremont. I have seen Mathis in so many hardcore matches, and to be honest, it's white-knuckle stuff. It's every muscle in your body clenches up during those matches because I'm not sure. Personally, I couldn't do it. I could not put my body through what they do. Yeah. It's impossible.
Hey, man, I was just in a main event Island of Death match, in the past couple of months. I got put through barbed wire. I got my head split open, and I was done after that. I can't imagine, what some of these guys are doing with the light tubes and the panes of glass and just the crazy stuff that they're doing, But regardless, Mathis is somebody that I have noticed in the past year, big time. Honestly, I had no idea who Ron Mathis was before this year. Had no idea. And again, as we talked about, I took a hiatus from wrestling. So when I came back in at the beginning of last year, he was somebody that I saw at a show in Cincinnati. He was different. He was a little off as he is, but he caught my eye. And coming up to Rockstar, he has something. And again, that hardcore, that deathmatch mentality, and you add in somebody like Tremont, who, holy cow, will put himself through anything. I'm excited about this one. I think it's going to be gross. I think it's going to be one that, it's not for the faint of heart, but for the Rockstar fans, the people who are kind of, let's be honest, our fans are a little bit bloodthirsty. I think this will be a match for them.
Definitely. I'm going to put you on the spot, though. Give me your choice.
I'm going with Mathis. Mathis is Mathis is on a roll, and I think with his very welcome change of behavior lately, I think the guy is basically unstoppable.
Well, as much as I want Mathis to lose the belt, I think that his God complex at this point in time won't let him. Tremont does not come to Rockstar Pro every single week. And he comes as much as he possibly can, and we consider him part of our family.
Yeah, the guy's on the road every week, though.
I think that the God complex of Mathis is going to basically push him to places that he's never been before. And so, on a personal level, I hope Tremont puts him on the shelf for a few months, gives him enough time to think about all of the crap that he's pulled in that arena, because he thinks that he's God. Well, he's gonna have a come to Jesus meeting quite soon with somebody. So I'm pulling for Tremont. However, I think that the psychoses of Mathis at this point in time is actually going to work to his benefit.
All right.
Well, went a little bit over the amount of time, but hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to our perspectives here. JT Davidson, this is your format. I know that you kind of wanted me to play traffic cop a little bit and move things along, but yeah. Any closing words?
Look, if you guys enjoyed anything, or you think, man, I wish they would have talked about this, we're going to give you some email addresses. We're going to give you, obviously you can always contact us on our Facebook pages, but, we want you to let us know, what do you want to hear about, whether it be Rockstar, whether it be indie wrestling, Japan, WWE, doesn't matter. This is something for your entertainment. But
what if they bring up something they want me to talk about that you're not a fan of?
I am a very skilled debater, JP, so I would be more than happy.
Master debater?
Told you, man.
Mr. Baggins. Mr. Baggins. Understood. You can buy all this equipment.
One of these days, I very easily could buy all this equipment. JP, one of these days, I'm going to really let everybody know how I feel about you, and it's probably going to be with a couple of my clients holding you down and beating the holy hell out of you.
For JT Davidson, my name is JP, and this has been The Business of the Business.